The New York Jets car shopping has hit a snag. Derek Carr has revealed his thoughts on potentially joining the New York Jets today on his podcast. We dive into what this means for the Derek Carr to the Jets potentially happening, and also what this means the Jets will have to do in order to pivot. All this and much more coming up on Rich Sports Talk. Welcome into Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content throughout what's going to be a wild offseason for the New York Jets. Make sure to follow us wherever podcasts are available. Again, if you want to take us on the go, we stream wherever podcasts are available. And again, here on YouTube, jump into the live stream, join our chat, give us your thoughts, your questions, and of course, super chat to jump to the front of the line and make a donation. Well, it has been a couple days. I posted an original video earlier this week about my thoughts about Derek Carr, and I think I was pretty fair. I thought that Derek Carr intrigued me more than a couple of options, but there was a lot of red flags. But one thing I kept asking was, why would it be the Jets? And a viral clip kept going around a couple months ago where I believe it was in December. Derek Carr and his brother David, like they both have a podcast together. And ironically, Derek was wearing green. And we're talking about Aaron Glenn. They're talking about Derek Carr, who again was never officially coached by Aaron Glenn, said how much he loved Aaron Glenn, how much he respected Aaron Glenn. So of course, this made the rounds, got Jet fans excited about this possible connection. But then Derek Carr, of course, after hearing these rumors, dived a little bit deeper into his comeback today. Quote, would I come back? The answer is obviously yes, but I've had to say no a couple of times so far. I told you this. It hasn't changed from the first year that we did. Would I do it? Yes. Would I do it for anybody? Absolutely not. Would I do it? I absolutely would do it. I told you two things. I would have to be healthy, and I'd want a chance to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, that's a tough thing to find. That is hard to do. That is not easy. And he also mentioned later in the conference that he would like to look good in purple and gold. So my first thoughts was this too with Derek Carr, who's going to be, let's remind people, 35 at the start of next season, is why would he pick the Jets? Unless there was no other option. And Derek Carr's at the point in his career, he's made over $100 million. I think he'd like to get back in the NFL, but it'd be for the right situation. And look, Derek Carr doesn't have to rush back. He doesn't have to necessarily even find a team this offseason. If he can convince the Saints to release him, maybe he sticks around and is working out throughout the summer, and who knows? We see this all the time in the National Football League. Early in the season, week 3, week 4, a key player goes down with a major injury, like a Joe Burrow, let's say, for an example, or like a Justin Herbert, a key quarterback that you didn't see being out for the remainder of the season. Team gets desperate, and Derek Carr looks at a roster, says, it's a pretty good situation. I would love to dive into that. So with Carr, I always thought it would be an intriguing fit, and I like the aspect of him potentially mentoring a young quarterback who the Jets would draft this year. But the thing I always kept thinking was, if he's going to come back and risk injury, if he's going to come back for what probably will be a 1 to 3 year run, if lucky, why would he come to the Jets? Maybe the only way I could see is no team wants him. He signs a 1-year deal with the Jets to prove he can still play and then go to free agency next year. But I do think it is interesting because I think he is leaving it out on the table. Like, hey, if there's a team that has a question at quarterback and you want to compete, I'm there. I mean, and a couple jump to mind. Obviously, the first one, because he mentioned the purple and gold, is the Vikings. It's clear that the Vikings, it is not comfortable in that room because you had Sam Darnold. You let him walk out the door, and he goes and wins a Super Bowl. You stuck up for J.J. McCarthy, and that does not seem to be working. The Vikings are in a very precarious situation. I mean, heck, they already fired one of their key staff members in the front office because of the Sam Darnold move. So now all of a sudden, does Derek Carr intrigue them? Does Derek Carr give them a backup or break glass in case of emergency? There's a situation where he might have to come in and compete, Derek Carr, but could the Vikings say, look, we want you to compete with Derek Carr. We want to see how healthy you are, but we want to give you a fair opportunity. And I mean, Minnesota, great offensive coaching, great weapons, great system, brutal division, but really good team. That to me made sense. Another team which made sense to me, and again, I understand the timeline could be impacted throughout this offseason, was the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are in a tough situation because Daniel Jones is a free agent, but of course had the Achilles. Even if they re-sign him and he comes back, even if he makes it to training camp, we've seen it with Jermaine Johnson, we've seen it with a bunch of players. They're not the same player usually that next year. The Colts, as we know, went all in. They've traded 2 first-round picks to us truly, and they have a good roster. And they understand that this is a limited window, and you don't want to waste it. And we saw it last year that basically this team had no other backup options. Maybe Derek Carr, they convince him to come into being in camp and say, look, you're going to compete with Daniel Jones. If you're healthier and he beat him out, you have a fair chance. And look, the Colts, another great roster, great running game, good offensive line, talented team, a team that when we saw had good quarterback play was a 7-1 football team. That was a team I'm also looking at, like Derek Carr. Okay, that kind of makes sense. And look, we all know that certain teams are going to have big decisions. CJ Stroud with the Texans. Maybe do they bring in Carr as a backup there? Like there's all these other teams that I look around the league. And even if it just came down to the Jets are the only team this offseason that had interest in Carr if he gets released by the Saints. Carr might just say, why don't I just wait? Why don't I just wait for an opportunity to arise where basically someone gets hurt, I can come in and be that team's savior at quarterback. And I think he made his comments pretty clear. He would come back for the right situation. And there's a lot of things Derek Carr should like about the Jets. They have a good offensive line. They have a true number one receiver. They have a good running back in Breece Hall. But I get it. If he's going to come back and make this comeback, he wants to be on a team where he compete. Now, the flip side to that, Derek Carr, what playoff quality teams are really looking at you for a quarterback? Most of them already have the answer at quarterback. The one team that kind of doesn't is the team that I laid out with the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, they're a team that, again, like if you give them the right quarterback, maybe they could be a playoff team. But I just look at this whole situation, the way he's come about this. And I think Derek Carr's laying it out. I think if the Jets gave him a ridiculous offer, which I'm not advising them to do if he gets to free agency, he might consider it. But to me, these comments point out a lot of things. He's made his money in the league. He's been very successful. The one thing he wants is a ring. And he's looking for the right situation to do that. And unfortunately, as we know, the Jets is not that situation. Okay, let's get to some of your comments. Super chat to jump to the front of the line. Drones, again, stance on the no Carr rule. Again, I get where you're coming from, Drones. All right, Chris. Hey, Nolan. Hope everyone else all well. Go get support. Again, guys, subscribe to the channel. So miss any of our great content. Again, heads up, this Sunday we will be doing our full mock drafts now for people new to the channel, just to give you a little heads up. I traditionally do 7-round mock drafts on this channel, but my caveat is after free agency, because I feel like once you hit free agency, you get a clear picture, you see what holes have been filled, and then it's easier, I think, to do a full 7-round mock draft. So I tend to do the first couple mock drafts or 3 rounds. In this case, it'll be 2 rounds because the Jets don't have a 3rd-round pick. So I'm going to lay out my mock draft this Sunday. Probably around 12 or 1 o'clock. I'll set up the video so you guys can make sure you're there for that. But we'll do our first mock draft. I'll explain my 4 picks, or maybe even 5 picks. Again, I like to do trades. You never know what I'm going to do. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss the mock draft coming here. But Carr needs to understand that not many teams are competing for a Super Bowl missing a quarterback. You're right. And that's kind of the catch-22 to this. The one team that makes somewhat sense is the Vikings. And the Vikings are in a situation, too, where I don't think they like their quarterback. They're not going to be in the range, and it's not a good draft to take a quarterback this year. The free agent crop, as we've well established with the Jets, is not good. So maybe Carr is an intriguing option for them. Like, that to me is like the one option. I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And even with the layoff, like you look at people that have that layoff, and you're right. Like it does happen with Carr. And the thing that always concerns me is he feels great. He's throwing the ball around well. But what happens when he gets hit or lands awkward on that show? Like they described it as the shoulder was permanently altered or damaged. And that to me is concerning because, again, when you get hit, you're going to get hit in the shoulder. You're going to get thrown to the ground. You're going to get landed on, even not intentionally. I'm just not sure if he's going to have the durability. And it goes back to what one of my coaches said in youth football, which it's always stuck with me, which is it doesn't mean anything until they put the pads on. You can see guys throwing the ball 60 yards without the pads. You can see guys running and not being able to be touched. But you put those pads on, something changes. And you really get to see what true football players look like and the true difference between what really differentiates really good football players and really great football players. So it's great he's running around in short and t-shirt right now, zipping the ball around. That's fantastic. But what's going to happen when that first defensive tackle comes through and knocks him on the ground? He lands awkwardly on his shoulder. Is the shoulder going to survive? Is he going to be injured or battling shoulder issues? And it's not the best. It's an apples and oranges example. But I always looked at a guy who had shoulder issues like Chad Pennington, and it got to the point. It would come to the point where Chad was successful, but I give a lot of the success to Chad just because he still had that accuracy. And Chad was such a witty quarterback. But you could tell, especially after the surgeries, he didn't have that zip, couldn't really push the ball down the field, was limited what he could do. And again, I give him a lot of credit. He was able to function in an offense basically function within an offense and basically make it work. As I'm getting fumbling my words here, and I apologize, especially for the podcast listeners. So I just look at Carr. Is he going to be able to deal with that? Like, let's say week 1 he feels great, but week 6, week 7, not even shots to the shoulder, but to the legs. Like, he has to use the shoulder a little bit more to compensate. Is it going to basically go at some point, or is he going to lose the zip on his fastball? I mean, one of the clips that always stuck out to me was they were doing a behind the scenes with the Jets in Pennington, and it was still when Herm was coaching, and he was throwing a ball deep, and Herm commented, "Ooh, that changeup there, ooh." Like, he could tell, like, Pennington did not have the same zip anymore. And I'm curious to see, I would love to see Carr back in the NFL. I just don't think at this point he's healthy enough. And look, maybe he still views the Jets as an option. Maybe he gets to the point where he's like, look, and his agent goes, look, Minnesota doesn't want to touch you. No one will touch you except the Jets. If you want to come back, this is your one shot. And maybe he goes, you know what? I want to play so badly. I'll give it a shot. Maybe this is my 1-year audition to the rest of the league. Or he says, you know what? I've made $100 million. This is going to be a long grind. I'm just going to sit it out. And look, I don't blame Derek Carr. And look, I get why so many people have had so many polarizing views of him. This has been a lot on X and social media, going back and forth with, especially within the Jets fandom. There's so many different ways we're going to get to the end of this road with the quarterback. There's hundreds of names we can discuss. There's countless draft scenarios we can discuss. I know that the Jets quarterback room is going to be different next year. I don't know how it's going to be different. I don't know who's staying, who's going, what moves they are eventually going to make. But I do know this. There's going to be, in my opinion, at least 2 new quarterbacks. And when I mean new, not necessarily great, and look, let's be frank, the Jets quarterback situation, the reason we're talking about a Derek Carr coming out of retirement, a possible trade for Jacoby Brissett, is because the Jets quarterback situation is terrible right now. It is absolutely horrendous. And, I guess if you want to win for the Jets today, I guess Woody Johnson, who didn't like the report cards at the end of the season about ownerships, well, I guess they're not doing that anymore. So at least they won't get an F again from the players. But I just look at this quarterback situation. Either way you slice it, it's not appealing. And look, if you get a Jacoby Brissett, if you get a Mac Jones, is it going to make me feel like the Jets are all of a sudden a Super Bowl contender? No. A playoff contender? No. It's just I look at all the options, and they're not great. And here's the other thing, too. we have to consider all the different possibilities and the different ways this offseason can break. And I'm also very curious, too, to see what quarterbacks you guys want. Let me know in the comments. Give me your thoughts on certain quarterbacks that you're intrigued by, and I will answer your questions. And Drones, you know what? I don't hate this as a coach. Again, they filled the staff. I mean, I wouldn't hate it just getting another bright guy in there. And look, the other thing that concerned me about Carr is go ask Chris Olave how it went with Derek Carr. There was a lot of hospital balls, and there's I think Derek Carr has taken years off of Chris Olave's career. You don't think if Derek Carr is if the Jets go to Garrett Wilson, hey, Garrett, what do you think about Derek Carr? He's not going to call up Chris Olave, and Olave's going to be like, yeah, you don't want him. The one interesting quarterback that's been discussed, and I think it would be intriguing because of the unknown, and I saw this again this week, was Malik Willis, and what are my thoughts on him potentially coming to the Jets? And here's my thoughts. I think that it would be the best option of all of them just because I feel you can get a reasonable contract, you can front load it, and if it doesn't work out after a year, you can get out of it, and it gives you at least someone with enough prowess that you don't have to draft a quarterback early. You can maybe take a flyer on day 3 guy. I feel like you're going to overdraft a quarterback this year because you have to if you get anyone other than Malik Willis. But the one thing I will say about Malik Willis, which really does concern me, is this. Malik Willis was in Green Bay last year. Miami now has the Green Bay defensive coordinator and the Green Bay general manager, guys that have worked with him, guys that have seen him in practice, seen him in the meeting room, see how he conducts himself, see how he's a leader on the field. If they do not make any push to go out and get Malik Willis, like they say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go a different route, even though Tua is likely going to get cut and we're going to eat all that cap. But yeah, we're not interested in Malik Willis. That to me would be a major red flag. Because if you have former staff that have worked with him, that have said that have now gotten new positions, they need a quarterback. And we know how hard it is to find a quarterback. And they say, you know what, we're good. We don't need Malik Willis. That to me would be a major red flag. And I would be very concerned with the Jets. And I think Malik is clearly a better thrower of the football with Justin Fields. But once again, you'd be taking a dice roll on another high-end quarterback, another quarterback that we're not sure how good of a starter he can be through a full season. And realistically, another quarterback that you're going to have to develop. And look, do I think it would be a little bit smoother with Frank Reich now than it was previously? Maybe a little bit. But with Malik Willis, I look at a guy who has a lot of upside, would intrigue me, would at least make it so. And again, this sounds terrible saying this, but the reason I would want Malik Willis is you're not going to give him 4 or 5 years likely. If it doesn't work out, everyone's getting fired. You're going to have 3 first-round picks. You're going to have high draft capital. You're going to draft another quarterback. So I just would look at Malik Willis like he's the one guy where you take him, you know he's going to be the guy, and maybe you take a flyer on a day 3 quarterback, but then I don't have to worry about this team overdrafting a Ty Simpson, overdrafting a Nussmeier, overdrafting a Trinidad, who again, every day he's going back to the NCAA. No, he's not going back to the NCAA. Now he's fighting the NCAA again. Well, now he's doing another injunction. Like by the time we get to the draft, there needs to be a 30 for 30 on the whole Trinidad just staying in school. Is just something crazy. Drones, I just drafted QB, honestly, just now at the first few picks. And look, Drones, I agree with you. The best thing for this organization is to do exactly that. But here's the problem. Aaron Glenn knows he's on the hot seat. I mean, they just did a chart yesterday, and he was number 1 on the hottest seats coming in. I hate this, but I think the Jets are going to overdraft a quarterback. Just because I've said this again, time and time again, this team is not going to win many games next year. The best I can see them doing is 6, maybe 7 wins. And in that case, that's probably not enough to save your job if you're Aaron Glenn. So what is a better selling point to the ownership and to the fan base? Yeah, we were terrible, but we improved the defense. But yeah, we still don't have an answer at quarterback. Or yeah, the defense got a little bit better. We were still bad, but look, we found this quarterback. We developed him. We at the very least, have shown we can develop a young quarterback, but we also feel they can build around this quarterback. And look, the thing is, Drones, I just don't see why. I just don't see a great quarterback. Like Nussmeier, I think is a good example. I think at the best, he's a below average starter in this league. I think his ceiling is a really great backup. He's a guy that can win 2 or 3 games for you in a pinch, maybe in a season. To me, he's a really high-end backup. So if he's number 3 quarterback, one's going off the board at number 1. You're kind of now debating, where do you pick Ty Simpson? And I think that's where the Jets are basically going to be land. And look, again, I think a lot of it too, Drones, 6 or 7 wins, it's all about how it looks. Like, you're right. If the team looks dramatically different, they're losing 1 possession games, then yeah, I think there's a good chance that AG and the staff could be back. But if they're getting their doors blown off, if they're getting beat by multiple touchdowns, if they're losing games by 14 in the first quarter every week, then it's going to be a firing squad. All right, Kevin, Brissett is still my preferred bridge pair with the late round like Cole, Payton, or Aller. I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on Aller. Again, I didn't love the tape, watching the tape this year. I missing throws, inconsistency, and again, that injury is a big concern. The problem is you have Brissett already under contract. He's with Arizona. And I just don't see, LaFleur getting rid of him. I think that Arizona's going to want to try to draft a young quarterback. But if they're also going to move on from Kyler, I mean, I just don't see. I mean, that to me is also the dark horse team for Malik Willis, if I'm honest. Because, again, you have the brother connection in Green Bay. Look, the problem is you either have to hope Brissett gets cut or you have to trade for Brissett. And Arizona, I just don't see a scenario where they're going to be like, yeah, we'll just give him away for nothing. They might be saying, like, we want a 4th-round pick. And at that point, you're like, is it worth it? So, yeah, I agree with you. I think he'd be a great bridge, but the problem is, how are you getting the bridge? Let's get someone else. I'd take Nuss, Beck, or something. So, Beck to me is someone, again, who's been on really talented football teams, but you see when things start to go south, he does not handle adversity well. And look, you're going to about as adverse of a situation with the Jets as possible. I just don't think he'd be a good fit. His makeup, I don't think would work in New York. Look, I like Nussmeier. I just think that there's a certain ceiling with Nussmeier. I just don't really see Nussmeier. Like, if they could get him round 4, I'd be thrilled. But the problem is the supply and demand of this quarterback draft is so thin. It is so thin. I just don't see – I just see someone getting overdrafted. Title even looked better than Milroe. Milroe was late. Well, again, you also had a lot more quarterbacks in last year's draft. You had – it felt like this is basically a 1-quarterback draft, basically, as we're sitting here. And I just look at Nussmeier, and look, part of the thing, too, is how you handle adversity. You look this last year, I understand he was hurt, but you're the quarterback. I understand that it was not a great environment at LSU, but you also, as the quarterback, you have to put on. Like, let's face it, you're going to a situation where it's going to be potentially unstable with the coaching staff, with this front office. So is it really – if you had trouble handling that at the college level, how are you going to handle at the pro level? And I just look at this class right now. Like, if you were to ask me today, how many in the top 100 players would you say are quarterbacks? It's 3. It's Mendoza, it's Simpson, I think Nussmeier, but Nussmeier is at the very back end. The very back end. And I also look at Nussmeier, too, bit on the smaller side, 6'1", closer to 200. He's undersized. We know Frank White likes the bigger, quote, quarterbacks, more traditional stand in the pocket. And look, he's with Nussmeier, he's got a strong arm. We know that he can throw from different slots. He's very cerebral. His father was a coach. He can put it in tight windows. But the other problem with that is sometimes when you have that arm talent, you need to reel it in with your mental makeup. And there are times like that overconfidence of pushing the ball in those tight windows cause turnovers. And the difference is the NFL, like the gaps are 1 yard, where in college it could be 5 yards. And you look at tighter windows, better defenses. I'm just not sure. And I just see him as a guy like this is Nussmeier. I think his ceiling is this. He's a guy who will be a really, really damn good backup in this league. He can come in and win you a couple games if you need it. And if the Jets look at it and say, hey, we're going to bring him in. We're going to show we can develop a young quarterback. We'll give him reps the second half of the season, but we didn't draft him one of the 4 premium picks. We view him as a long-term backup, and we're going to take a quarterback next year. Then I could be like, okay, at least that's somewhat of a plan. And again, like when I talk about these players, I'm not trying to bang on them. I'm not trying to rip on them. I'm trying to be as honest as possible when I talk about them. And again, I'm going to have my mock draft coming out on Sunday around midday. So make sure you check those out. And again, I think when I look at the ceilings, I think Ty Simpson has a better ceiling. You look when I look at Simpson, I think is going to have a really good draft pre-process. He's a very witty kid. I think that you saw at the end of the season, it just started to go downhill for him. And with Milroe, again, like if you're the Jets, like could a possibility be, do you trade for Jalen Milroe? Like would the Seahawks put him on the block potentially? The thing I also look for too is the Jets to me have to be creative. If you don't love an answer in this draft, I would implore the Jets to try to get a young quarterback from another team who maybe they can develop or at least give a chance to compete. Like Tanner McGee's names come up a lot with the Eagles. In some ways, would I rather have the Jets trade a day 3 pick for a Tanner McGee, a younger player that's maybe been in the league a little bit longer, has time to sit and learn an offense, has time to process in this league. I mean, that's one of the things I like about Tanner McGee is he's been sitting for a couple of years. He's been in a good system. He's learned behind a quarterback. He could be potentially eased into this as opposed to throwing a rookie out there. I mean, I see Drones keeps mentioning Jalen Milroe. I mean, could Jalen Milroe potentially be available again? I don't know if his skill set's going to clash with what Frank Wright does. But I just look around the league right now at young quarterbacks, like in their mid-20s, like could you take a shot on one of them and bring one of those guys in to maybe compete? Like, again, I would not touch Kyler Murray. Like, every Jet beat that was at the Super Bowl, if they talk to anyone from Arizona's all like, you do not want that guy. Stay away from him. And look, like McGee, again, I know it's not a move that would move the needle, but I'd rather take a shot on a guy like that than throwing a rookie into what really is going to be a chaotic situation. And like McGee to me is someone I would potentially look at. I mean, I'm trying to think of other kind of those mid-20 range quarterbacks, that are in that young range where maybe they haven't got the chance to start, but you'd like to see them get an opportunity. I mean, I think Marcus Mariota, again, a free agent if he doesn't go back to the Commanders, could be an intriguing guy. I think he could be an okay bridge. You don't have to get a draft pick. And look, McGee, again, it's been a small sample size, but I mean, 6th-round pick. I mean, and to me, it tells you what is very telling with McGee, and I'll move on to other quarterbacks next, is the Eagles dealt Kenny Pickett. They were happy to have McGee as their backup. And look, there's questions about Jalen Hurts. You have a quarterback that's running around all over the place. He's one play away from a significant injury. And the Eagles said, look, we're comfortable. If we have to go to Tanner McGee, we feel like we can still win football games. So, I mean, that could be a guy I would definitely take an eye on. I mean, Gardner Minshew, I don't think probably leaves Kansas City. I would not touch Anthony Richardson. I'm just telling you, I wouldn't. I mean, the perfect guy for this team would be Jameis Winston, but I do not see any scenario where the Giants are trading him. If they did, I think that'd be bad. Yeah, Danger Zone, hit the like button. Danger Zone will be on later tonight with amazing content as always. Again, good to hear from Danger Zone. No, he's been working incredibly hard recently, and again, we'll have to have him on to talk more draft capital. I can see a word, make Hooker their 3, sign 2 vets, and wait for the 2027 guy. So I wouldn't hate that. I mean, Hendon Hooker knows the system, says he wants to come back. Tyrod Taylor wants to come back. He can be your backup. Again, it comes down to who you sign. And I mean, I kind of like the McGee combination just because, again, it's someone that at least there could be some growth in front of you. You know, if you bring in like a Kirk Cousins, for example, you know what the ceiling is. It's past it. You know that there's a limited ceiling with Tyrod now, at least with McGee or someone like that. Because, again, McGee's getting into the last year of his contract. Eagles don't want to pay him. This could be a great opportunity for him, and it's a selling point to come to the Jets. Like, hey, you have a chance to start here. You have a chance to hit free agency in your mid-20s and have a good season as a quarterback. And, you know, again, the nuts over tie debate is really going on in the chat, guys. It is going on between Jones and Kevin. They are going back and forth of, again, it's Alabama versus LSU in the chat right now. So, again, we'll have our first mock draft coming out this weekend. Again, I tend to do my mock drafts. I like to do it off tendencies. Again, I think I have a better idea of what type of players Aaron Glenn and Darren Mujier are looking for this year. I also will look at potential fits. I really do think that the Jets, in a perfect world, would not draft a quarterback with the top 44 picks. The thing I get concerned with is, again, this team knows they're on the hot seat. This organization knows they're on the hot seat. Are they not going to go down with like at least a rookie quarterback? Again, that's the Ty Simpson debate. In a perfect world, could you get Ty Simpson in round 2 potentially? And I'd be happy with that, even with the 33rd pick. But the issue I run into with Simpson is, since there's so little supply in this draft, like we go from Simpson, who we think could be a starter, has the tools, to Nussmeier, who's ceiling as a backup. That is a significant drop. And again, Simpson also has a lot of things working against him as well. I'm not going to say he has warts. He has only 15 starts. You look at the dip in performance the second half in the 2025 season. But, you know, this Simpson, the big thing you liked about him is he can read defenses. He was able to navigate muddy pockets. Like, this is a guy who can deliver from the pocket and process the game very well. And I just see Frank Reich, for example, really liking this kid and just getting along with this kid. And looking at the rest of his class going, yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about the quarterbacks. But again, there's so many different routes. We talked about the Tanner McGee route. We've talked about Derek Carr. Like, think about this. 2 weeks ago, if I were to say that the New York Jets would be discussing Derek Carr as a quarterback, I feel a lot of you would be like, Nolan, were you drinking before the show? Did you do something before the show? Because that's just a crazy take. But I mean, here we are. Here we are. Feel bad for Mendoza. Guy's going to a situation where there's no protection. He could get shell shot like Carr. And that's the sad thing is, I think Mendoza would be better off here. And the other thing, too, is this is the one reason I really wanted more in the draft. Wasn't just because so you had something at 2, but my big thing was, could the Raiders talk themselves into more? Because it's a new coaching staff. They're not on the hot seat. And they also have to think about their division. Like, you have to project, can Mendoza go toe-to-toe in 3 years, realistically, with Patrick Mahomes, with Bo Nix, and with Justin Herbert? I mean, Bo Nix was just the number 1 seed. Herbert was in the playoffs. And yeah, Kansas City had a down year, but you can't tell me that as long as they have Patrick Mahomes, they don't have a chance. So, and if you project that Mendoza is going to be the 4th best quarterback in that division, look, Mendoza might have a really good career, but if he can't get past those big 3, then it's going to be a very difficult situation. And look, I think the Jets would have been a perfect situation, but unfortunately, the way it worked out, like it just seemingly always does, is the Jets are there. They have a terrible record, but for some reason, they can just never get the number one pick. They just can never get the number one pick. And look, I do think, too, that you see, if you want to give this staff a little credit or you want to give a little bit of hope, like, look, am I blown away by the coaching hires? No. But I think the big thing is, I do think we're going to see the plan on defense is going to be a lot more 3-4 again. Detroit ran a lot of hybrid, but I can see the Jets running a lot more 3-4 again. You look at the D-line coach they brought in, former Jet, who basically has only worked a 3-4. I mean, I'm sorry, but you're not – if they brought him in to be a 4-3 coach, then maybe Aaron Glenn shouldn't be a head coach. But I just get the feeling you're going to see a lot more bigger bodies on this defensive line. And I think that the Jets, especially with that number 2 pick, I think now it's kind of coming down to a 2-pony race for the number 2 pick. I think it's going to seriously come down to Arvell Reese and David Bailey. Those are the 2 guys. And again, I know there's a lot of people that love Ruben Bain. If you were to tell me they were doing a 4-3, and look, they're going to do a bunch of different hybrid fronts, but they're going to be primarily a 3-4 front. Those 2 guys make more sense. Ruben Bain, again, player I really like, but you look at him a little bit smaller, 6'3", 275, not really a good size edge in a 3-4. Again, the short arms as well. He's going to have to take on more double teams. So I kind of get the suspense. It's going to get down to those 2. 16 is going to be a key pick. There's scenarios where I could see the big 3 receivers off the board where you'd have to debate. One thing, and again, I keep seeing this. I keep seeing corners mocked to the Jets in the first 44 picks. Look, I think the Jets are going to do a lot of work on the secondary and free agency. I also think they're going to be aggressive with safeties. I think that they're going to go into the draft looking for a lot of beef, whether it's on the defensive tackle position, the defensive end position, definitely linebacker. I could see, and look, just adding more playmakers to this offense. They just need to add more players. And then you look down the line at the 33rd pick. I also, if you had to ask me today too, and again, I'm going to do a bunch of mock drafts. I do 7 rounders after free agency, but I'm going to do the first one this weekend. If you had to ask me what pick the Jets trade, the most likely is going to be 33. Because I just get the feeling that there's going to be a player sitting there at 33. Now, again, if Ty Simpson's there at 33, that makes it a little bit more difficult. But if Ty Simpson's off the board and they're picking at 33, I really think that is a pick that they're going to trade out of for multiple reasons. Number one, statistically, it's the most traded pick in the draft. One of the big reasons with that is because now with the way the draft's set up after round 1, teams come back into their war room, they reevaluate, and there's going to be a team that goes, we have a top 15 grade on that guy, and he's still on the board. Let's go up and get him with the Jets. And the Jets, who need a lot of players, need a lot of bodies, I think will be willing to move in. Plus, they have 42. If they could move back later into round 2 and somehow get another day 2 pick with round number 3, and come out with 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, I think they feel a lot comfortable. And look, let's say they draft, for example, Ty Simpson with 16. Again, we have to throw all the possibilities. They say, look, we took the big swing at quarterback. We got to get more. We have to disperse this roster. We have to get more picks to build around. And also, that's a pick we really weren't comfortable necessarily making at 16, but we knew we had to. We knew he wasn't going to fall to 33. But let's trade back and add capital, add pieces. Because I really think in that round 2 range, there's going to be a lot of really good D linemen, D tackles, linebackers, because there's such an emphasis on offense. There's so many good defensive players that fall into round 2. That's the strategy you have to look at. And maybe you can get someone later in the draft that really fits this team, like a guy on day 3 that I think the Jets could really be looking at. For example, I could see them looking at Malachi Fields. Malachi Fields. Look, 6'4", 222. Are there higher-end receivers in this draft? Absolutely. But when you look at him and what he brings to the table, it's a great compliment to Garrett Wilson. This is a bigger target, someone that is really similar like the Michael Pittman. He's not going to burn you down the field, but he's got enough speed. He can play the ball in the air. He's a good route runner. I think he could be a really elite number 2 in this league. I think he's someone you could look at. Could they maybe add another piece like Jadarian Price, the running back from Notre Dame? Add another solid running back because we know the Jets want to run the football. Yeah, I mean, and if they switch to 3-4, are they going to look for some bigger ends and some bigger linebackers? I mean, like a Gabe Jackas from Illinois at 270. I mean, they could look for some serious beef there. I mean, I look at Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, 320 pounds. Like, he could be someone that they look for in that range. And look, there's a lot of different ways. We're going to go through all the different scenarios to our mock drafts. So, again, make sure you hit the like, subscribe button. But, again, this is a good question. Was Reich around when David Bailey was at Stanford? If it was last year, I think he was. So that could be an interesting connection. And look, I'm going to talk about the two of them in my mock draft. I'm not going to spoil anything, so you guys come back and watch that. I think you can't go wrong with either of those players at 2, but there's a favorite in my opinion that's going to be up there. Let's see. Again, it comes down to the scheme. If they're going to be equal 4-3, 3-4, then I don't mind drafting Ruben Bain. But if they're going to be primarily a 3-4 team, I just don't think Bain's a fit. And look, I think Bain, this is the problem you run into with Bain. I think Bain's going to be a really damn good player. But is he going to feel like when you're drafting a guy in the top 5, you want them to be a multi-time Pro Bowler, a true game-changing player. I think Ruben Bain's going to be a really good pro. But I think he's going to be more of the 8 to 10 sack guy a year, good against the run, really good player, makes your defense better, is a great asset to your defense, but he's not that, quote, needle mover. So I'm definitely curious to see where he falls as well. And look, there's a wide variety. He's probably the prospect that's got the widest variety. I mean, you look at boards, you see guys who have him in the top 5 players, and then you see guys that have him near the 20th player. Like, there is a very wide discrepancy. And look, I really like Bain. I think Bain is going to, like I said, be a really good, productive pro. I don't know if he's going to be one of these elite impact players. Like, I don't think he's going to make an impact like a Caleb Downs or a Sonny Styles are going to make consistently every year. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think he's going to be a really nice player. And look, I mean, he did have the dominant stretch down the stretch. He played really well in the playoff. I think that absolutely will help him. But I'm curious to see where he falls. And look, a lot of this is going to be different flavors. I mean, the 3 receivers, I could see them going in any order. I could see Mekhi Lemon going first. I could see Carnell Tate going first. I could see Jordan Tyson going first. I mean, that's what's fascinating about this draft. Like, there's going to be a lot of parity, and a lot of it's going to come down to who you like, especially once we get past pick 16. A lot of those players are kind of in that same pool, and you could see some guys just for fit, just for guys that they like, just going a little bit ahead, like especially on the offensive line, especially in the wide receiver room, on the defensive tackle. I think a good example is, like, I look at like a Caden McDonald and a Caleb Banks. I think those are 2 really great D tackles, but certain guys are going to evaluate each one higher. I mean, Denzel Boston, a really big outside receiver. I think that some people are going to love the size and the ability to go up and get it, but there's also some concerns about the speed and the separation that he brings to the table as well. Bain in the 3-4 is even better. He could play every position. I mean, he could stand up on the edge. The big thing too, Drones, is this. If you get Bain, you need to figure out what are the rules of Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. And look, there's a scenario where one of the 2 of them is not here on opening day. I think those are very distinct possibilities. So again, a lot of it's going to come down to how they want to build this roster. And look, we're going to dive into it this Sunday. We're going to do our first mock draft, the 44 picks for the Jets, their first 4 picks in the 2026 draft. I'll give you my mock draft, my initial thoughts, why I came up with this. and why I think it is a scenario that could easily happen for the Jets. Again, I don't do the full 7 round till after free agency. And basically wrapping up, we now got an answer on Derek Carr. Derek Carr wants to play for contender. Look, am I surprised? Not really. I thought that would be something that surprised me. Like, he really wants to come back out of retirement just to play for the Jets. And look, I think he also doesn't have to come right away. He can maybe wait till the beginning of next season. Someone goes down in training camp or in the first season, or Daniel Jones isn't recovering from the Achilles. That could be a possibility for Carr as well. But look, it's going to be a wild off season, and we're going to be here every step of the way on Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our New York Jets content and NFL draft content. Until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich, and this has been Rich